Awakening happening, and you are about to become a part of it. Wake up, because this is a call for an uprising.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. A tidal wave of flu has hit the UK. Remember the good old days, ladies and gentlemen, where people would have the flu and they'd actually have to beg to stay home from work or from school? They would call you at your house and tell you have to have a doctor's note to prove that you had the flu in the first place. They would try to get you to come into school even if you were sick. Of course, the workplace would only give you a limited amount of days if you were sick to actually stay home and take care of yourself to get better. Nobody cared back then, but of course we live in a different society now where they've made everybody live in fear of the common cough and the common cold and, in fact, the flu. The flu is like the new deadly disease, apparently. Remember the good old days a couple of years ago as well, where suddenly the world became so fearful of the flu that they wanted you to lock yourself in your home 24/7. They wanted you to isolate. They wanted you to wear masks everywhere you went. Remember you used to fly during COVID, or you tried to fly if you did or didn't, or you went to a restaurant or somewhere and you had your mask below your nose, and they would pretty much tell you, they would ridicule you to pull your mask up over your face, because of course it was all about compliance. It was all about conditioning and compliance. I remember even seeing some of these people out where you would know that they were complete lunatics, where they're having dinner inside of bubbles and pretending like this dystopian hell was normal and fine and they were doing the right thing, or people walking the streets wearing bubbles, perhaps. You might remember that. We all saw people driving in cars wearing masks. We've seen people wearing these contraptions at their offices. We've seen pictures of these people wearing these contraptions, smiling, sitting on airplanes. And guess what? Well, the UK and the NHS, specifically Daniel Elks, is calling for masks to be worn in public spaces once again because the flu, surprise, surprise, has returned. People have runny noses and coughs, and now the government once again is urging people to get vaccinated, and they're urging people to wear masks in public, to do the right thing. In fact, they're urging people within the next 2 days to make sure they go and get their flu shots. Dr. Jamie Lopez Bernal, consultant, says, quote, "Nobody wants anyone in their family, especially young children, to spend Christmas in a hospital," right? That's not playing on people's heartstrings. The best defense against this is a vaccine, but time is running out, as it could take up to 2 weeks for vaccination for your body to build maximum protection. Of course, we all know there's no greater scam than the vaccine. There's no greater lie than the flu vaccine. In fact, we've had doctors in the past, including Dr. Oz, and many others tell you that they would never give their family or their children a flu shot because they don't actually work. But again, we know how important it is to get this certain nanotechnology inside of everybody's bodies. It's important to get everybody vaccinated. It's important to get people to wear masks again for total compliance. And as we all know in the UK, because it looks like it's really coming down hard in the UK, they're also mandating a digital ID, right? Digital ID, mandatory work requirement to tackle illegal migration. So you have all these things that were all a major part of, obviously, COVID. Isolating, staying home, locking yourself down, which I'll get into in a moment here, because we already have schools on lockdown in the UK because of the flu. We have mask mandates, and we have vaccines that the government are pushing down everyone's throat through fear. And then on top of all that, we know in the background is the digital ID, which, of course, is about illegal immigration. But don't forget, they could also tie it back in with the flu and tell people, well, we need to monitor people who have the flu, where they're coming from, what they're doing, who they're around, right? So that we could decide who should be forced to quarantine and who shouldn't be. So let me play this clip for you of the NHS, which is the National Health Services in the UK. Daniel L. Kelly's talking about how people and the government in general need to start getting things in place for next year's flu to combat it. And it's going to be things like making mask mandates normal again.
There is a tidal wave of flu. That's what we said last week. And the thing about a tidal wave is this is a very big tidal wave. It's a very nasty variant of flu that we have this year. And it's much earlier in the winter season than normal. So children are still at school. It's warm and wet, so it's perfect flu spreading conditions. So we're kind of in quite uncharted, unprecedented territory for this time of the year.
And people, people will hear you and they will say, yeah, no, we hear this every year. We hear that the NHS is overwhelmed with flu cases. We hear that there's going to be a real crisis of beds. And people will sort of just go on with their daily lives. Is this very different? Do you need people to sit up and listen this time round?
So we really do need people to sit up and listen. And actually, we need to have a big debate, probably after this flu season, about how we prepare the public better for what happens every year. So if you haven't already had your flu vaccine and you're eligible, please go and take it. And if you're not eligible and you haven't had the flu already, then it's probably the best £15 to £20 investment you could make by going to your local pharmacy and saying, please, can I have the flu jab? And then when you were talking about it being like COVID, I think we need to get back into the habit that if you are coughing and sneezing, but you're not unwell enough to not go to work, then you must wear a mask when you're in public spaces, including on public transport, to stop the chances of you giving your virus to somebody else. And we were all very good about infection control during COVID, and we really, really need to get back to that now.
So you're saying if people are in the office today and they're not poorly enough to be off, they can go to work, but they have got a cold, they're snuffling, they are coughing, they should wear a mask in the office?
I think that would be very sensible to all their colleagues, or probably their colleague to say, please go home. But we really got to worry about the fact that this is a very nasty strain of flu. It spreads very easily. It's warm and wet out there. And people just need to be sensible because you can see from the data how busy the NHS is. You've heard from a GP. You've reported on the headlines about hospitals in Birmingham. You can really see it in the number of people phoning 999 and 111, how busy the ambulance service is, how busy emergency departments are, how much corridor care there is as a result of the huge number of people being admitted to hospital. This is a really big deal.
So it's incredible that these psychopaths have the gall to still sit here and tell us about mask mandates, about vaccines and how you should do the right thing and get vaccinated. But we're living in a world where these people could say whatever they want and they know there's not going to be any pushback from the citizens. There's not going to be any uprising. The citizens aren't going to overthrow the government, which they have every right to do if the government is failing them and not working for them, which the governments all around the earth right now have proven that they're not working for the people. They're working against the people. And what they're doing is they're normalizing things like mask mandates, things like pushing vaccines on everybody for conformity. They're pushing digital IDs. They are obviously in the business of behavioral control. And we are seeing more and more of the government use government overreach. So now on top of that, schools in the UK are in lockdown as the super flu is affecting hundreds of pupils and staff. So they're making children isolate, quarantine, and stay home. Next thing you know, they'll be telling people not to go out in the next couple of weeks, right? And we'll see no pushback whatsoever in the UK, just like we're barely seeing any pushback when it comes to digital ID. And you might say, well, there's people who are protesting it. There's people who are filling out these things online where they protest and everybody puts a signature as if the government actually cares. The only thing the government fears is the people taking control and the people rising up. They don't care if you fill out a form that says we're in opposition to the government trying to push a digital idea. They'll do what they want if there is an actual real pushback, which is non-compliance, which is the people either dismantling the government itself or shifting away from the government and saying, we're not going to participate in your government anymore. Saying, 50,000 people saying, we're not going to be a part of your government if this is what you're going to do. We're not going to agree to pay taxes to you. We're going to form a new government because you've clearly gone rogue. You're clearly obsessed with behavioral control and getting people to conform to the things you want, which is staying home, knowing, of course, that our homes have now become prisons because every single thing that you bring into your home that has the word technology on it or smart on it is obviously a monitoring and tracking device. So our homes have turned into cells where we have cameras all over the place, whether it's our phone that they could turn on whenever they want, the camera on the phone without you knowing, or your smart TV or your smart fridge or all these stupid smart devices like the Alexa. Then you got your cameras on the outside of your home as well with the Alexa, which I've talked about many times, which is accessed through the police department, which is accessed through companies like Amazon, give it directly to the government, and we've created our own surveillance state. So the other thing to remember is that when they told you COVID wasn't going to go away, they weren't lying about it. But what we've seen is that they haven't pushed more variants because they're afraid of public pushback, because they were getting to a point where there might have actually been an uprising, or there might have actually been a large group of people that no longer were going to participate, vote, or pay taxes in the current government structure that's in place. Now, what people need to remember is that a lot of the stuff that happened during COVID was preparation for the climate laws. And people don't realize that when they talk about carbon emissions. Well, they don't want you to drive, right? They don't want you to fly. They don't want you to travel. They don't want you outside your home. They don't want you to use a certain amount of electricity, of course, because they need to feed all of our energy resources into these data centers, which are really is our surveillance grid. And a lot of this stuff was out there during COVID. Temporary reduction in the daily global CO2 emissions during COVID-19, right? COVID lockdown causes record drop in carbon emissions for 2020. So they want people in the future to live exactly the way we did during COVID, only under the guise of climate change. Stay home. Don't go out as much. Don't use electricity. Don't use your car. Wear a mask, because humans also emit carbon, right? And that's really the carbon emission that they care most about. Remember Greta Thunberg, right? This Illuminati, I mean, the fact that Greta Thunberg is this environmentalist, we're told, and you see all these pictures of her holding things up over her eye. I mean, how ridiculous is some of these all-seeing? I mean, I've covered this stuff for, a decade now, at least online, where I show you people doing the all-seeing eye symbolism, and sometimes it's like real obvious, where they're just holding up a hand and they're playing peekaboo, right? Sometimes they'll do it casual. They'll put hair over their eye. This is one of the more funny ones, a couple of these, right? You got Greta Thunberg with a shadow of a hand over her eye. You have Greta Thunberg with a flower draped down over her eye. Almost looks like a pirate, right? You have Greta Thunberg covered in the black goo, of course, in the photograph as well, doing the all-seeing eye symbolism, and we know what the black goo represents, right? Of course we do. We know it represents that graphene oxide, that nanotechnology that they've gotten inside of everyone's bodies. And during COVID, Thunberg was out publicly talking about all movements have had to stop back during this pandemic, because that's simply what you have to do during the crisis, says Thunberg, whose plans for 2020 to travel to Asia via Trans-Siberian Railway were upended by coronavirus. You have to take a few steps back for the greater good of society. And of course, they were just working people back then to be prepared for a world where they're telling you at the same time that climate change is the biggest threat to humanity, and the climate crisis is here and we have to stop it. Well, they told everybody that the only time we've seen carbon emissions go down was during COVID. No other time do we hear them say, oh,